Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics. Another special session is another special edition of This Week in Missouri Politics. And we're joined for the first time by St. Louis County Executive Steve Stenger. Mr. Executive, welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics.
Scott, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
We've wanted to have you on for a long time, and now it's a particularly acute moment. The legislature at the end, Senator Richard, discussed it in a particularly effective way, having this General Assembly involve themselves into some regionalism issues in St. Louis. Some call it a merger, reunification, undoing the Great Divorce. Well, whatever it is, the legislature now has seemed to set its sights in January on putting their nose into the regionalism issues. How does that strike local St. Louis County and city people?
You know, St. Louis County is a pretty independent place, and the people of St. Louis County like to make their own decisions about their own government and about their own organization. So I don't think that I don't think people took it too well.
So it's an interesting thing to me, if you look at the revenue, and it's not something people like to admit. I'm just a simple West Butler County hillbilly, but I don't like to admit that there's no free cheese in West Butler County without St. Louis County footing a lot of that bill. And it's an interesting part to me to think of, what if yourself and Councilwoman Hazel Irby or Councilwoman Colleen Wassinger decided to go to Newton County and decide how Joplin dealt with Newton County. Sure. To me, I think you'd have probably a second Civil War on your hands. And it's an odd thing to me that the legislature might want to know best about how to run a local government. We've seen the legislature impinge on minimum wage laws, now some abortion laws. But this is a different thing. They're actually redrawing boundaries of cities.
Yeah, they're really talking about reorganizing our region. And as I said, St. Louis County is an independent place. People want to have a say-so in how their government looks and how it's structured. So I don't think that that would be taken very well. And, everyone should know, St. Louis County particularly is not interested in, going anywhere else outside of its boundaries and trying to reorganize other people. We're not doing that. We're here to take care of the business at hand and run a good, solid government and have a healthy region.
I think that's one of the things that binds people from Missouri and Missouri is that they're pretty independent-minded folks. Yeah. And I wonder, you've got one senator that'll be really on the hot seat in this, Andrew Koenig. He'd be the Republican member from here. Senator Schatz has some of it, but he's from Franklin County. It'll be interesting to see how in the state Senate, which is where a lot of the action happens now, how they take a forced reunification coming from the General Assembly.
Yeah, I don't think it would be taken very well at all. I really don't.
Speaking of, there's some local solutions that they've worked on in Jeff City they haven't been able to come to agreement on yet, but in St. Louis County you have, and one of them is prescription drug monitoring. Yeah. Give us the shirt tail rundown of what you've done in St. Louis County on prescription drugs.
Yeah, what we did is we created a prescription drug monitoring database within St. Louis County. And then we invited other counties to join. We essentially made our database joinable, and so that it could be coordinated with other databases. So some of the first to join us were St. Louis City, St. Charles County, then Jackson County, Kansas City. Currently, we have about 58% of the state's population covered by our database, and we have about 76% of the state's providers covered by the database. So it's really been successful, and I think that we're going to have more counties joining, and there are counties contacting us quite literally every day.
Yours was known as a pretty even-handed, moderate.
Yes.
Joe Patterson with the St. Louis County Police Officers Association, he was on here touting its effectiveness, what he thought it would do.
Yes.
The one at the state that could have gotten passed was a pretty watered-down version of it. And you were credited as somebody that said, look, if we have to choose between ours and a pretty watered-down one, we'll just keep ours. Yeah. What was the thought process in there, and are you willing to sit down and negotiate with the Governor GREITENS, with a Representative Rader, on trying to work out some compromise between the two?
Yeah, I have since met with Representative Rader and talked about the proposal and kind of what happened to as it worked through the system. And at the time when we were considering what kind of a position to take, we want a database that is as good or better than the database we already have, because we believe that the database does have a great appeal, and counties are joining all the time. So I think we're going to get most of the state covered with our own database. Now, with that said, we would love to be out of the database business if we had a statewide database that covered it. We just don't want to have anyone without coverage, and we want to have a database that is not watered down.
So with those two state issues, your name's been talked about a lot in the Capitol as somebody that might be a gubernatorial candidate in 2020. How does those rumors strike you?
Well, as you can see, I had to smirk and laugh a little bit there. I really love my job. I love being the county executive. It's been one of the great honors of my life. I love our county. I love the people that I represent, and it's just a great job. I think it's the best job on the planet, and I don't plan on going anywhere. I don't plan for running for anything else other than this job.
Speaking of the county, there's a lot of things going right in the county. Give us the high points.
Oh man, we've got so much going on that's great right now. The first thing that I would always want to talk about is the economic boom that we're experiencing. We have had about $3 billion of private investment in just the last year. One of the big ones there would be Centene, right there in the heart of downtown Clayton. $772 million of investment, which represents about what would be 30 years of development, being compressed into about a 7-year period. So we're talking about a rapid expansion. That development alone is going to bring about 2,000 jobs, retains a whole bunch of jobs in addition. Worldwide Technologies, another one. Massive development of their campus, having their headquarters in Westport, choosing to have their headquarters in Westport, bringing hundreds of jobs, retaining thousands of jobs. Just a great development for St. Louis County. And those are two of the big ones that make up, we have Pfizer, we have Monsanto, we have the inception and the beginning of a new concept and a new space called 39 North, which is really amplifies our place really in the world for ag tech and ag science. It's a 600-acre space that we are going to fill with innovators, entrepreneurs, for collaboration and cooperation right in the heart of Creve Coeur, right in the shadow of Monsanto, right in the shadow of the Danforth Plant Science Center. And it's an incredible facility. We've been working very diligently on it. We've got interchange work going on. We've got some pedestrian amenities going on. And we've already got lots of interest. We already have an international Argentinian ag tech company, Ag Idea, that's going to be moving in. We have some developers that are interested in actually building out space. So it's really exciting. We're in a very exciting time for economic development in St. Louis County.
With some of the mergers and acquisitions, St. Louis has maybe come up on the short end of some of those. Do you think sometimes there's a disconnect with what's actually happening positively in St. Louis and some of the public mood?
Sure, there really is. As a general matter, there are certain media outlets that just beat up on, really we beat up on ourselves constantly through those media outlets. And it's always stressing what's wrong with St. Louis, what's wrong with St. Louis County, what's wrong with St. Louis City, what's wrong with the region. We have a lot to talk about that is right with our region. And if you look at some of the collaborative efforts that we've made in just the last year, the NGA, keeping the NGA, that took cooperation from the county, from the city. It took cooperation from our federal delegation, our state delegation, our governor. That was a great collaboration and a great cooperative effort.
That NGA will help the county as well.
It will, and we had 2 spots in the county that we could have chosen to endorse, and I chose the city as the endorsement because, it worked out very well for everyone. The city received the NGA, and now we have, in our other spots, we have one particularly is the Chrysler plant experiencing, part of that economic boon is the redevelopment of the Chrysler plant. So the way everything worked out, the way we were able to coordinate, the way we were able to work together, that demonstrated just what is right with our region.
Looks like there's a good karma between you and the new mayor, Lyda Cruson. That relationship seems to be at least friendly, right?
We have a great relationship, a great working relationship. Communication has been great. Coordination has been great. We've already begun to coordinate, and we have coordinated actually extensively on metro safety issues, on our Metro link. And she's been great to work with. And we also worked with Illinois there as well. So that's another instance of regional collaboration and really the regional leaders coming together and working on a solution to an issue we have.
Real quick before you go, the last few election cycles statewide have been pretty hard on the Democratic Party. Lost all of the statewide offices that have been contested, the supermajorities for Republicans in the General Assembly. What do you see 2018 being for Republicans and mostly for Democrats as now the Democrats have the president in office? to shoot at.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really good year for Democrats. I think we've got a really strong candidate in Nicole Galloway. I think we have an extremely strong candidate in Claire McCaskill, both extremely strong candidates. I think it's going to be a good year overall, given the climate of what's going on in Washington for Democrats. And I look forward to being on that same ticket with those great ladies.
We've been very excited to join the business community in St. Louis County ourselves with the Clayton Times launch. I want to thank you and everybody else in St. Louis County that have been so welcoming to us. But it's to turn a phrase from a friend of mine at the other end of Lindbergh, it's really a great time to live and work in St. Louis County. So
it really is, yeah. And we're excited to have you, and thank you for having me there last night. That was great. And what a great kickoff you had. It's fantastic. We really look forward to all that you're going to produce and all the information you're going to be providing us.
We look forward to having you back on This Week in Missouri Politics, sir.
That's great. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll be right back with our opinion maker panel. Tracy McCreary makes another appearance. We'll see you after this.
My name is Eric Philippi. I'm a veteran, a carpenter, and a father. When Eric Greitens said he was going to change politics as usual, folks like me didn't think the first thing he'd do as governor was take dead aim at our jobs and our families' livelihoods by working to repeal prevailing wage. Call Governor Greitens. Tell him to protect prevailing wage and to protect my family, not destroy it.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, the heart of Missouri.
Nobody likes power outages, including us. That's why Ameren, Missouri is investing in new equipment and smarter technology to reduce outages and keep pace with future needs. And it's working. We're in the top 25% in the nation for reliability. And on average, our rates are 18% lower than other Midwestern states. Making sure the power's there when you need it. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back to This Week in Missouri Politics. I'm especially happy this week to be joined by the producer of the show, the editor of the Missouri Times, Rachel Herndon. People don't know that anything that looks good at the Missouri Times is you. Usually the screw-ups are always dumb ideas I have. So we are very glad to have Rachel Herndon done on the show this week. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I try really hard.
Yeah, and it works. Tracy McCreary, representative here in St. Louis. Welcome back.
Thank you.
We're very glad to have Eric Ingleby serving Representative Sean Rhodes and the good people of Howell County. Very glad to have you. Jeff Sean, candidate for state rep down back in West Butler County. Glad to have you on the show for the first time, sir.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So, Representative, you're I'm a simple West Butler County hillbilly. You're a learned St. Louis County representative. Break us down what's happening in special session.
Well, special session number 2, that's happening within a month of regular session adjourning, is focused on abortion and reproductive rights. So I think what the impetus was for this special session is back in 2016, the U.S. Supreme Court said that states and other political subdivisions cannot put regulations in place that hinder a woman's right to a safe, legal abortion. So several states, including Texas, had put laws into place that talked about it having to have admitting privileges for doctors that provide abortions, and also some very stringent requirements for ambulatory surgical centers only as it relates to abortion providers. So the U.S. Supreme Court said that those restrictions only serve one purpose, and that is to restrict a woman's right to choose. And so they're unconstitutional.
So there's debate in the Senate. They're going to pass a bill, right, Rachel? The House will pass a bill. It ends up being, what does that bill say? I think they definitely do the ambulatory restrictions, a couple other things. The question that I hear the opposition is not whether this bill will pass, but is this an extraordinary circumstance for a special session?
There's a lot of legislators on both sides of the aisle who'd say it's not. And what's interesting is the call for a special session was 3 pages long. It was very long. There were lots of line items, and there were a lot of things that raised eyebrows. And so last night the Senate was in until past midnight talking about whether the Attorney General should have jurisdiction over prosecuting crimes related to abortion. So that's interesting and something a lot of people are watching.
It was interesting to me the Senate reconvened at 12:01. That's the first time I'd seen that. So is this a special session? Is the circumstances surrounding this truly special enough to bring legislators back into office? I mean, that seems to me the debate's not will this pass, it's is this really extraordinary?
Right. And, you know, abortions and pro-life movements are very sensitive for a lot of people, and it's really important in the state of Missouri. But when you look at the circumstances, I don't believe that it falls within the extraordinary circumstances required.
I think it's an interesting take. And people forget this state is very pro-life. It is. And I don't think there's any empirical data anybody could show that the average Missourian is pro-life. They elect pro-life legislators when given the chance. Sure. Even successful Democrats like Jay Nixon, his first term, he was not as zealot against or for abortion rights. Where does this special session go in? Does this start touching the base and firing them up?
Well, yeah, it does fire up the base for sure. You know, it's easy for me as a hopeful legislator to feel like it's okay to have that special session. I'm not the one that's up there, but it seems like it's a very important matter to me. The bill that came out, I think, took up the three most important aspects. And I think the health of a woman, she's a patient when she goes in to get an abortion. I think that's critical that there be standards. So I think it's a good bill, and I think it's worthy of the special session.
To me, you wonder, as someone who is pro-life, is this a federal issue now? I mean, the federal court has said abortion is legal in the state, in the United States. It seems to me where we're discussing is where we move those lines is how tightly we regulate it. It looks like the federal court is pushing back and moving that line toward less regulation. Do you think the state can get something passed that will withstand a federal court scrutiny?
Yeah, that's outside of my purview. I don't know what the federal court's going to think about that. I put myself in the shoes. Let's say that I'm a commercial property owner. I don't want to be told that I have to. That would be horrible for me as the owner of a property to be told that I have to lease to Planned Parenthood.
Is that a step too far? I mean, and when you look at it, do you want the converse being where you have to lease to certain types of groups? I mean, is that a piece that's going a little too far to protect abortion rights?
Well, I think that the scenario is a place that's pro-choice, a place that provides abortion, wouldn't want a landlord or to work with someone that wasn't supportive anyway. So I think we have to focus on what this is truly about, which is this special session is an attack on women's reproductive rights, and I disagree with you respectfully. Sure. The legislature feels and is pro-life, but the majority of Missourians still want abortion to be safe and legal and rare. And so we need to be focusing on things that are not illegal and not unconstitutional. And everything that's come out of the Senate this week is going to be found to be illegal and unconstitutional.
I think that's a likely thing too. Is most of these restrictions go too far.
They do.
And the federal court standard is moving, and it seems to be moving in the direction of fewer restrictions. However, I would ask, you look around the House chamber next week, you're going to look at a bunch of people that campaigned as pro-life very loudly and effectively, and Republicans are elected, and every time they have an election, more Republicans get elected. Every one of them is pro-life. Can you really say that Missourians aren't very pro-life off a survey when if you look at the real ballot, they elect more and more pro-life members every time they're asked?
Well, part of that is because there are no options. There seems to be a litmus test in the Republican Party that you can't even run as a pro-choice Republican. So that's part of the challenge. But no, I have access to recent polling that shows that still the solid majority of Missourians still want abortion to be safe, legal, and accessible.
Rachel, at the end of the day, to me, the city of St. Louis looked like they were doing a bit of grandstanding with the bill, the board bill that became an ordinance in the first place. Looks like the legislature may be doing, and I think a little grandstanding itself. I mean, when you're bringing in Mike Huckabee for a payday, it's hard to say this is a serious legislative matter.
You know, it's interesting. The city of St. Louis decided they were going to be an abortion sanctuary city in February. A solid 4 months ago, and now we're in extraordinary session. $20,000 every day being paid to members of the legislature to come in for this issue that's 4 months old now. And it's kind of interesting. Missouri is one of about 4 or 5 states that has the strictest regulations on abortion. And deep down, it makes me curious what Missourians were expecting whenever they went to the ballots in November. Is this what they asked for?
Okay, I like that Missourians want pro-life legislators, and they elect them. And every time you give them a chance, they elect more of them, right? I mean, it seems to me to be, this is what you expected, right?
Right, exactly. When you elect pro-life legislators to come to Jefferson City and to fight on behalf of the unborn, that's exactly what they're going to do.
Rachel, there's an interesting thing where some senators taking the time. I don't think anybody's taking this session. I think they know how the outcome's going to be here, so it's a little bit less than serious tone. And part of the time that people have on their hands, you had some senators come together, a bipartisan group, and call for an investigation into how the GREITENS campaign got a fundraising list from the Mission Continues. interesting thing. Bipartisan group I haven't seen like this in a long time.
Absolutely. And it's not just Republicans and Democrats from urban areas. There's urban senators, there's rural senators
Yes.
from vastly different political areas. And they've come together because they're concerned. This is something new in Missouri. And actually in other states, it's not new. And it's completely common to have governors with 501c4s that we're calling dark money because we don't know where the money came from. We don't know how much money there is. It's not public record. And that concerns a lot of legislators, especially the ones who are being attacked by this dark money group. And so 5 or 6 senators came together. They proposed a resolution to have a Senate committee to investigate the governor, which is obviously a very new thing to happen too. This is a new trend.
This fundraising list was probably, I mean, if it went
Not
from a
just
charity.
an average fundraising list.
Yeah.
He raised the governor raised almost $2 million from that list. I'd love to have a list where I could raise $2 million from the donors.
It seems like the Ethics Commission did leave some questions unanswered, but wow. I mean, imagine being Ron Richard and Mike Keogh having this bipartisan group of senators. I mean, if you have 5 senators, that's a fifth of the Republican
Right.
caucus.
Well, I think that this is a great example of the voters want transparency. They are sick of the unethical or the appearance of improprieties in politics. And I think that it was very brave of this bipartisan group to get together. And I would like to think that if the roles were reversed, that we would see the same cooperation. So the voters don't care about party affiliation when it comes to good government.
You think that the governor tires of continuing to call legislators back if they start investigating him with their time?
You know, I don't think that he's really going to be affected by this. It was just a message that the senators wanted to send to the governor's office, and they sent it. And if he wants to continue to call special sessions, he's going to do that no matter what we say.
So as a Republican, though, aren't you a little curious as to, I don't think this Denny Lobb guy, or maybe there is, we don't know how he got a list from a charity and gave it to a campaign. I mean, there is some unanswered questions there, right?
There is a little bit, but at the end of the day, I don't think we need to launch a huge investigation and take up time on the Senate floor talking about it during a special session when we are concerned about how much money this is costing. Let's focus on the issue and save that for another day.
John, the governor's a very smart man, right? He's a Rhodes Scholar. He went to Oxford, hotty toddy.
Yeah, and
he knows the laws of a special session, how long they last.
Sure. Well, I'd just like to point out that this investigation has been called for.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's actually going to happen. Okay, so that's the first thing I think it's important. I would say there's an unanswered question. So if there's going to be an investigation from the governor's point of view, don't circle the wagons, get it done, and get it behind you. The sooner you get behind you. Right? Yeah, answer the question. But I'm always for transparency. You know, when we talk about reform of different types, I don't really care so much about, gifts and how large they can be. I care about who got what. So I'm all for transparency. All that being said, I do think it's much ado about very little at the end of the day. So
that's what we have. When you haven't answered questions, you don't know. Let's talk about something that will affect a lot of the people watching this show. The legislature's discussing them taking the lead in a city-county reentry, reorganizing the way the St. Louis area is governed. That's got to be a little scary to you, right?
Well, I don't think the legislature's discussing that. So far, I've heard one senator talk about that.
But a very powerful senator.
Oh, of course.
Who phrased it. I have observed Senator Richard for a long time. The way he said that was the pitch-perfect way you would pass something in Jefferson City.
Well, I'm just not sure that the residents of St. Louis City and St. Louis County will take kindly to the Missouri legislature telling us how we're going to be structured around here. To bypass the will of the voters in the St. Louis region, I think, is the wrong way to go about doing this.
I have the utmost respect for you, but if you wanted to reorganize West Butler County, we'd have a problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Conversely.
Yeah.
Rachel, is this something that is a real priority next year?
I don't know. It's been a discussion apparently for 150 years when the Great Divorce happened in 1876. I mean, there's been tension between the county and city for a very, very long time. And I'm not from St. Louis City. I'm not from St. Louis County. I'm from the other side of the state where we're not organized like this. And I've heard that there's apparently $2 billion of quote-unquote waste of duplicated services. And there's apparently a lot of people who don't have a problem with that because they like that local connection with their service providers, whether it's the fire department, whether it's infrastructure providers, etc. And so I think it's going to be something worth watching. I think the legislature is going to be very hesitant.
Republicans are for local control, except all the times they're not, right?
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, I think that there's a lot of things that have been discussed that are going to be brought up next session. Whether this is one of them, only time will tell.
See, what do you think? I mean, it is a logical place where you could actually do something. Is it the right place to do something?
I'm a West Butler County hillbilly. We sort of have a majority sitting here, but you and I, and so I don't necessarily have a dog in the fight. But I like to be consistent. I think local control is important. I think self-determination is important. So, I'd like for the two parties to find out areas where they can agree and maybe get some efficiencies in government. That's possible, but it being a legislature issue, I don't know about that.
Rachel Herner with a minute left, who won the week?
Senator Jason Holzman, he is the leader on the investigative committee that he would like to establish. Whether or not it gets established or not is another question, but he did propose the resolution. He did change the conversation.
Representative?
U.S. Senator Claire McCaskill won the week for shining the light on and speaking out on the need for open hearings on Trump's replacement for the ACA.
Eric?
Definitely the Capitol Police for their heroic efforts earlier this week,
yeah.
Yes.
Jeff Shaw?
Scott Vaughn for a long time.
Thank you, sir.
The Clayton Times,
Thank you very
in an era when newspapers are going away, here's one starting up. Congratulations, Scott.
Thank you very much. I got to say, Missouri Right to Life on the week. I mean, it shows a lot of this whole special session, I think, is a testament to their strength. They had a big rally in the Capitol. I think something ends up getting passed, and it's probably a testament to them. I want to thank you very much, and we'll be back next week to talk about the end of the special session and the results of it on This Week in Missouri Politics. This Week in Missouri Politics, brought to you by Spire and Sterling Bank. And I wanted to finish up this week talking about a new project we're working on. Some of you know I publish the Missouri Times out of Jefferson City. We have a SEMO Times out in Southeast Missouri. But I wanted to tell you about a Clayton Times project we're working on. It's something we've worked on a long time now, and we just launched it this week. The Clayton Times will be a newspaper that covers everything in and around it and really focuses on St. Louis County. It's something that's very exciting to our staff that we've worked on. We're going to cover the county courthouse. We're going to cover City Hall. We're going to cover the legal community, the business community, and we're going to cover some of the nightlife in Clayton. It's an interesting thing. I lived in Clayton for 2 years, and I really found it to be this outstanding place where a lot of the great things about St. Louis are happening. When I was a kid, we used to come up to St. Louis for vacations or to come to a Cardinal game. But every night I'd listen to the game with Jack Buck and Mike Shannon. The local country station would always play the game, but afterwards, Live at Shannon's would be come on, and that did not come on the local station. So I'd run a coat hanger out the window to catch KMOX, and the sounds and everything about St. Louis was just so exciting, so proud to live and work here in St. Louis, and we're very proud now to tell you some of the other people's stories about their time in St. Louis and what they do. We had a great launch event. I'm so grateful for everyone that came out, everyone that Facebook messaged us or tweeted us. I want to thank Senator Christopher Bond, our first subscriber. We're very fortunate. Folks that drove from across the state like Bill Kinney, like Rocky Miller, Mike Searpoy, Todd Richardson came up from county. We are very grateful. We had over 300 folks at Cafe Napoli. Their staff was outstanding. And we are very excited to be off and running to bring you what we hope will be a new voice in St. Louis media and a new take and some new information. I'm a believer that the more voices out there, the better. I think that if you want a left-wing editorial page, you could probably find one somewhere. If you want a right-wing talk show, you could probably find one somewhere. It's about time the center makes what we hope you'll find in the Clayton Times. So thank you to everyone that's reached out so far. And we hope you go to ClaytonTimes.com and read some of our coverage and maybe consider subscribing. We'll see you next week.